Sabbath. Good morning to everyone. Happy Sabbath. I am not going to keep you long here today. You know, one of the things that my children tell me is, tell Daddy that when he speaks, not to speak too long. So I am not going to speak long today, and it's not going to be an in-depth or a complicated sermon. But what I would like to do is to remind you of some basic concepts of health and the laws of health that we may not focus our attention on many occasions, and to give you some practical tips on what we can do in relation to this particular law of health that will help us to improve our lives and to improve our health. I want to thank the pastor and my brother for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm glad to be here with you today. Now, God has blessed us as a people with a lot of information on what we can do to be healthy and what we can do to stave off diseases, but also to improve our health. I come from a part of the United States near Loma Linda. A lot of people are becoming more and more aware of Loma Linda because of the Adventist Health Study, and also due to the fact that recently the National Geographic Society identified Loma Linda as one of the areas in the world where people live the longest. And I do not believe that that has happened by chance. God has blessed us with a people with a lot of information, and if we will apply it, it would certainly be a benefit to us. Now, one of the things that we know, we have laws, and some of these laws in regard to the moral law. We know in the Bible about the ceremonial law, but there are also other laws that apply to health. And just to review, there are 8 of them. There may be more that we can also identify, but there are principally 8 laws of health: air, sunshine, temperance, rest, exercise, diet, water, and trust in God. And I know that typically a lot of emphasis and focus has been placed on which one? The diet. Okay? I am going to mention it briefly, but it's not my focus today. What I'm going to focus in a little bit more today is the one dealing with air. Now, in our scripture reading today, we learn that when God formed man, he formed him from the dust of the ground. And when he did so, was man yet alive after God completed the physical structure of the human? No. What did God do that imparted life to that creature that he had just formed? It was the breath. It's the air, the breath of life. That was what made the key difference in this creature transforming it from being lifeless to having life. And the air, the breath, is extremely important. We can go for many weeks without eating. We can go for a few days without drinking water. But we can go only for a few minutes without breathing. And therefore, it is very important that this part of the law of health, that we pay a little bit of attention to it. Now, also, we do know that the underlying cause of disease as a people is due to the violations that we may do in regards to the laws of health. And that we know that that can precipitate disease. So if we are sick or we are not healthy, the thing that we need to do is to focus back on the laws of health and to ensure that we are not violating them. And in so observing them, we will be able to once again restore ourselves to health. And in the aspect of ear, there are certain things that we can do that will impact on our health. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up is that while the violations of the laws of health can lead to disease, at the same time, there are certain underlying biological mechanisms and processes that are occurring in our body that can lead to disease. And there are some that they have identified that has pretty much been an important cause of many, if not all, diseases. One of the underlying mechanisms is inflammation. Now, when we talk about inflammation, usually we think about it in the context, or we could see it most prominently in people who have rheumatoid arthritis. What do we notice about their hands? It's swollen, it's tender, it's warm, and they also have a loss of function. And because of that, they have stiffness, and it's very, very painful. This is one of the very good examples that we can use to demonstrate that inflammation plays a major component in this disease. But inflammation also can occur in our bodies and is occurring in our bodies all the time. And if we do not have inflammation at all as a process, we would not be alive. Because things are happening in our body all the time. Bacteria, viruses, different organisms are coming in. And for our immune system to be able to mount an attack in order to circle or destroy these foreign invaders, that involves inflammation. But we do not want to have too much inflammation going on in our bodies, because if we have too much inflammation going on, then that itself can lead to disease and sickness and different health problems. Now, there's another underlying mechanism that can also result in disease. It's not as commonly stressed or focused, but it is also very prominent, and that is what we call oxidative stress. In oxidative stress, just by the act of living and even breathing, we take in oxygen, and as a part of the normal processes in our body, this oxygen is used by the body to metabolize our food, to do all of the different processes in the body, and as a result of that, we are generating different chemicals that can actually, as a byproduct of our normal processes, these chemicals can actually damage and destroy our cells, tissues, organs, and can also lead to disease. So these two mechanisms, inflammation and oxidative stress, can result in practically all diseases that man faces in our experience. Do you know that ear plays a very important part of that process of whether we have a lot of excessive inflammation or whether we have a lot of oxidative stress? And that comes around in terms of poor ear quality. If we do not have good quality ear to breathe, that can lead to excessive amounts of inflammation and oxidative stress. They have done some studies looking at different components of ear pollution. They're called particulate matter. And these are particulates that surround us when we are in an environment where there's a lot of air pollution. And one of these different components, which is particulate matter 2.5, because it's very, very small, these particles, when we breathe them in, actually can go into our nostril, go into our lungs, into the lower part of our lungs, and what it does is that it can trigger and set up inflammation. And this inflammation happens inside of our lungs, and it can happen in our blood vessels. And once we have that inflammation going on, that can also lead to many of the health problems or diseases that we face. Another one is oxidative stress. They have found that this particular component gets into our lungs and also produces oxidative stress. But it's not just in the lungs, because in the lungs, what do we have flowing through our lungs? We have blood, we have circulation. So our circulation is closely united with what we breathe, the air that we take in. And one of the components in the circulation, in our blood vessels, we have in our blood, we have red blood cells, we have white blood cells, but that is also transporting oxygen. And that's how we get the air from the outside into every different cell and tissue and organ in our body. So there is a close relationship between what we breathe in as far as air is concerned, and also the circulation that goes through our body from the circulatory system by that blood being pumped by the heart. So there's a close union between the two. Now, what transports the blood from our heart to the rest of our body? Is blood vessels. And in the blood vessels, we have an inner lining in our blood vessels called the endothelium. It's a single layer of cells that surrounds the inside of our blood vessels. And that single layer is supposed, if it's healthy, is supposed to be smooth, and it's supposed to be free of any crud or what we may call plaque. That endothelium is not an inert part of our body. It's an actual living, breathing tissue or component in our blood vessels. And it produces a lot of different chemicals. It produces chemicals that we call antioxidants that help to keep the blood vessel open and help to keep it free from forming clots. And it also produces other chemicals that will actually lead to the formation of clots and actually lead to the formation of different problems, like, for instance, not having enough of a gas called nitric oxide to keep the blood vessel open and healthy so that the blood can flow through it. So the endothelium is also very important for us to be healthy. And that goes back to what the text that we have today, that God breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. It's not just the breath or the oxygen that's getting in, but it also needs to be transported throughout the body, through the blood vessel system, with a healthy endothelium. So there's a connection between air and circulation. They both go together. So not only are we talking about the breath of life, but we're also talking about the life of the flesh is in the blood. And these two come together to produce the life and the health that we experience today. Now, if we do not have proper circulation, will that transform itself into ill health and also to disease? Absolutely, it will. Let me put a semicolon about the effect of ear and tell you that Dr. Robert Fogel at the University of Maryland did some studies, and what he found was that if you go to a fast food place and you eat one, like a Happy Meal with, the sausage McMuffin and the eggs and different things like that, if you eat these things and it goes through the body and is digested, it produces inflammation in the body. And when this inflammation happens, it actually damages the inner lining of the blood vessel, so that blood will not be able to flow freely through the blood vessel. And what he found was that this damage to the endothelium did not last for 1 minute after you eat. It didn't last for even 1 hour after you eat, but the effect continued for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, up to 6 hours after you eat that one meal. It produces damage to the inner lining of the endothelium, and your blood vessels are not functioning well. So it affects circulation, and it also affects the quality of the blood itself, which leads to ill health and disease. Well, do you know that we know that just by breathing in this one particular component in polluted air will result in an effect that's similar to eating that particular unhealthy meal. So therefore, the quality of air that we have is also very, very important if we're going to stay healthy and we're going to stay strong. There's one other condition that I want to talk about that is that's becoming increasingly more and more of a problem that affects our ability to get air from the outside into our body and to produce health, and that is called obstructive sleep apnea. Many individuals are getting heavier and heavier for many different reasons, and as a result of that, the air that we breathe in is not able to get into the lungs, into the bloodstream, and to the rest of the body. And that's manifested by what we call obstructive sleep apnea. What happens when a person has obstructive sleep apnea? They're lying down, and what happens to the airway? It is blocked. So the air is not able to get from the outside into the lungs, into the bloodstream. And that's manifested by not just that the person snores a lot, but that there are periods of time when they are not breathing at all. And some people will say, well, okay, well, a person snores and they don't breathe for a period of time. What's the big deal? Well, these what we call apneic spells, where you're not breathing, can go from 20, 40, 60, hundreds of times during the night, and the individual is not able to get a sufficient amount of oxygen into the bloodstream and to the rest of the body. So what does the brain do? The brain wakes them up, so the person is like, and then you don't hear anything, and then you're, what is that? What is happening there? The brain is waking the body up to say, we need air, we need air. And the person wakes up, and many times they are not even aware that they are being awake by the brain telling them they're not getting enough oxygen. That may happen time and time again over years. Eventually, what does that do? It puts an excessive strain on the heart. And the heart can actually get larger and larger. It can have an effect on your blood pressure. Your blood pressure goes up, and that also puts an added strain on the heart until what happens? One day, you just die from congestive heart failure. Why? Because we're not getting enough oxygen into the body and into the lungs and into the body throughout the body. So if any of you may know of someone who has an issue with that, take them in, get them checked to see the physician. They can do a home sleep study where that can be detected. And there are ways of treating that by giving them oxygen during the night so that the body will not be starved of oxygen and that this will no longer be a major problem. So just like how we can have these problems relating to our health by not getting enough oxygen, we need to be able to do certain things in a very proactive way that will help us to experience good health and to experience longer life. And what are some of the beneficial things that we can do? Well, one of the things that we can do is to make sure that our homes are in a healthy environment. I know that it's very, for reasons of saving money and saving electricity, many houses and different places are built in such a way that we're not able to open up the windows. And because of that, we have to breathe in recirculated air. Over time, that can also be an issue, especially if our filters are not clean, then that also creates other issues as far as the quality of the air by which we breathe. But if in any way possible, we can be in an environment indoors where we are able to breathe fresh air from the outside, that will also be beneficial. Now, as we move more and more into a modern society, air quality is definitely a problem. And many times we live in the cities where the quality of the air may not be the best. But if we can at least be more in an environment where the air quality is better, definitely it's advisable to have good ventilation and good circulation of air from the outside into the places where we sleep and where we live. Another component is also to have good sunlight in our homes. So if we can open our windows and the blinds and the curtains and get proper sunlight and also proper air in our homes, that will also improve the quality of our lives and the quality of our health. Also, we also need to breathe deeply and to breathe properly. Many times we tend to breathe in a shallow way, breathing from our chest, and we're not getting enough good quality air inside of us. So if you wanted to see the proper way of breathing, who would you look at? You look at a newborn baby, because they breathe with their diaphragm. They breathe in, the diaphragm comes out, and then when they're exhaling, the diaphragm goes down. So it's also important not only that we live in a proper environment where we get good quality air coming in, but where we are also breathing properly so that we can get good quality air and oxygen into our lungs and throughout our body. There are also certain plants that we can get and put in our homes to improve the quality of the air in our homes. Do you know what some of those plants are? Air plants, they're plants that produce good air and oxygen in our homes. Peace lily is one of them. And you can check at Lowe's or Home Depot and see if they have some of these plants that we can actually put in our homes. Peace lily is one. Philandria is another one. Another one would be the snake plant. The snake plant. The banana plant is another one. The banana tree, and the rubber tree. Those are some of the plants that we can actually get from our stores. You can check out these stores and actually put them in your home, and they will be beneficial in producing that environment. Are there places where we can go in order to get good quality air to breathe that will help us health-wise? Well, you have a lot of that around here. That is the beach, okay? At the beach, where you have the action of the waves, it produces negative ions. And that produces a healthy environment where you can breathe. I had a friend who she had some health issues, and she actually had sort of a episode where her heart, she went into congestive heart failure. And the ambulance came and took her to the hospital, and they did all of their tests, and they found out that she was borderline going on to congestive heart failure. And she told me that a few weeks after that, she took a cruise trip up to Alaska. And she said that when she went up there, she was able to walk around the cruise ship 2 or 3 times without any problem. But as soon as the cruise was over and she flew back to Southern California, where we are, as soon as she got off the plane, she went back into the same symptoms of having congestive heart failure, difficulty breathing. So that can demonstrate to you that if we are in an environment where there's good quality air, it will definitely impact on our health. Where's another place that we can go to get good quality air? The park? Okay, if you can go out into more in the country area where they have a lot of trees, in a rural area, that definitely will improve the air quality, and you would feel a lot better. I don't think you have this here, but where we are in Southern California, we have some mountains. And we have a major problem with air quality in Southern California. 7 miles away from the mountains on a typical day, there are times when you don't see the mountains that well. A couple years back, it was even worse than it is now. But I'm noticing that the air quality is even declining over the last couple of weeks over there. So if you have an opportunity to go up into the mountains, that will also be another place where they would have, if they have trees, that will also be a place where you can go to have better quality air. There's also a particular tree out in the country that is very beneficial for health. And what is that tree? The pine tree. The pine tree. So I don't think you have pine trees around here. You do? Okay. If you have an opportunity, to plant some in your backyard, have the pine trees. They're very beneficial and helpful. So not only the foods that we eat can play a role in impacting negatively our health through producing inflammation in our bodies, but there are other things that we can do, like air, that can mitigate against that and help to improve and reduce inflammation, reduce oxidative stress, and improve the quality of our air. When we are sleeping at night, is it advisable to open our windows a little bit to get the air from outside, or should we close our windows? Open the windows a little bit and let the fresh air, hopefully you have fresh air where you live, come in, and that will help to improve our sense of being. Our circulation would be better, and we would feel healthier. what they have found out is that poor air quality, air pollution, according to the World Health Organization, is the 13th leading cause of death in the world. And that is responsible for over 800,000 people dying prematurely just by poor quality air. So if we are able to take opportunities where we can go outside, go in the mountainous areas where there's trees, go by the beach, and breathe in good quality air, that definitely will have a positive impact. It would reduce inflammation, it will reduce oxidative stress, and it will help us to have a better quality of life. We will feel more alert, we will feel better, and definitely it will positively impact on our health. It's not a heavy sermon, but I hope it's a practical sermon that shows to you that good quality air, the breath of life that God breathed into us as humans and cause us to be alive, that's important, and that we should also focus in on that in order to have good health and good life.